If you are working in an organization where you haven't even learned what it means to be effective, which is to ship things that does make it to a customer and does drive behavioral impact, layering in AI simply makes you more efficient in your bad behavior.
Good AI product managers are good product managers first. And then, right, they can accelerate their work using these new tools. If you're good with the fundamentals, the new tools amplify your capability to do great product management work.
We are seeing, a lot of organizations are seeing the speed up of output, and it'll percolate down to product as people become more skilled with agents and so on and so forth. What is that transitional thing? Besides focus on the fundamentals, what practical stuff can you tell people about how to integrate this new world that they're in, right? Because everyone has to go through the transitional before the final phase or whatever that looks like. What should we be paying attention to today? Like beyond what we paid attention to yesterday. Hi, everyone. This is the ProductMind Podcast, or the On Podcast. And today we have a guest, Jeff Gothelf. And Jeff is a long-time, well-respected product guy. I'm sure you already know him. He runs Sense and Respond Learning, which is a product consulting firm. And today we have a very, very important conversation about what's emerging in the age of AI. So I'll just tee it up very quickly and then we can take it from here. We are seeing speed ups in how people build. There are more tools to turn your ideas into code. And maybe it's questionable if code turns into product. So we're about to talk about how to handle that speed up, how to handle who decides what gets into the hand of customers, especially now where the CEO and the sales guy can write some code. Okay, so I'm going to throw it to Jeff very quickly to help frame this a little more and just kick us off.
Amazing. Thanks for having me on, OG. It's nice to be here with you folks. Look, we're in exciting times. Things are really interesting. Things are crazy. I haven't felt this level of uncertainty since the early days of COVID. Now, the nice thing about this type of uncertainty is there's less of that it's the end of the world vibe than there was during COVID, which is nice, but there's still a lot of uncertainty and anxiety around this as well. But it's exciting too, right? I think a lot of us who are exploring these new AI tools and putting them into our workflow are seeing the potential and thinking about what that means for the companies that we work with, the companies that we advise, and the companies that we train. What's fascinating for me right now is that, forever, one of the big themes that we've talked about at Sense and Respond Learning and prior to that as well is this idea of outcome over output. The idea of the real value that we bring to the world is we help people change their behavior in a meaningful and positive way. Now, we do that through the delivery of stuff, the making of features and products and digital services and so forth. And forever, the focus has been on the making of the stuff. And we've always said that outcomes, right, the behavior changes that happen are the actual measures of success. And I feel like we made a lot of traction with that conversation. And then all of a sudden, AI has hit the world by storm here. And what's interesting is that right now, sort of the immediate impact of AI integration in most organization is an exponential increase in output, in the making of stuff, right? So before, if it took a team of developers to produce one feature in a sprint, now that same team can produce 10 features. And if a designer could produce a prototype in a few days, now they can produce it in a couple of hours. And so forth. And so this idea that we've shrunk down the time that it takes to make stuff, the direct impact of that has been a massive increase in the amount of stuff that we make. And what's happening is that we are getting saturated with all of that stuff. Let me be a word that's a bit more specific, right? Words. So by stuff, I mean code, documents, deliverables, designs, competitive analyses, research, PowerPoint decks, you name it, all of that stuff. And what's happening is organizations are finding themselves in a position where they are unable to evaluate all of that output. They are able to figure out where to pay attention with all of that output. And the customers and the consumers who are supposed to then receive the benefits of that can't consume all of the things that we're putting out into the world. And so the question for organizations today, at the moment at least, right, is if you're integrating AI into your workflow and you've 10x'd the amount of output that you're creating, right, how do we decide what's good, what's worth paying attention to, and what we need to discard? To me, that's a massive challenge.
Audrey, we're going to say something because I really want to go in here. So, Jeff, you are pointing out something that I'm dealing with as we speak, right? Currently at a client, Jeff, this is a big thing. At a client, the conversation we're having is that productivity is such a big word that people tend to forget that sometimes people equate it to efficiency versus effectiveness, right? And if you are working in an organization where you haven't even learned what it means to be effective, which is to ship things that does make it to a customer and does drive behavioral impact, layering in AI simply makes you more efficient in your bad behavior, right? And you may see that as productive because you are doing the things that you've always done. And I think that the conversation about productivity kind of obfuscates this truth. And we've had to go back and look at their workflows, look at the results, and are currently studying to see, have they even been effective? All the features that they launched, and they were really good last year, they only resulted in 35% use of their licenses. So what if they actually are more efficient in everything else they did, right? The customer cannot even consume all the things they've done. So what we're working on right now is actually the go-to-market aspect of the work and really understanding what is it that made it such that users were not using their product. So we're focusing, before it had to be this whole engineering, let's do agile, let's do who's shipping what. And they spend so much time making their teams so efficient, but they forgot to look at what can they do in terms of user feedback. They don't even have a feedback link within their product. So those simple things of understanding the user and having an intimate relationship and improving that productivity is where we've had to move them towards. So for me, it really came to life this week as we're talking about what does productivity mean for people. People keep saying everybody's more productive. And the reality is it made it clear that, okay, they're productive in that they're doing these things, but it doesn't change the bigger idea we've been talking about, which is outcomes, because nobody's looking at outcomes. We're still looking at output. That's a work product. And it doesn't help that many companies are asking their vendors and asking them to show how they will improve their workflow. So it's still a productivity as in efficiency measure than a productivity as in effectiveness measure. Anyway, I've said my piece. Audrey, you want to go for it?
No, I'm fascinated by this because I think that you're both pointing out something that has struck home in the last month. We get so distracted by AI that we sort of start not listening to our own advice. You know, for a decade or more, people like us have been saying that you have to focus on a sharp problem. You have to do all the fundamentals correctly. Meaning your team has to work well together. You have to have some North Stars to focus on. Basically, we keep telling people fundamentals, just like any coach in the NCAA or the NBA. But when AI came and sped up coding, we all got excited and maybe distracted because everyone's like, product managers are going to go away. And I think we stopped taking our own advice. And I don't so when you guys talk, I think about what I think the word that came to my mind is AI constipation, right? Right? Companies are getting AI constipation because there's 10x more shit to deal with. If that makes any sense. So look, here's what I want to sort of focus the conversation. I want to focus it on, we are seeing, a lot of organizations are seeing the speed up of output. They are. And it'll percolate down to product as people become more skilled with agents and so on and so forth. What is that transitional thing? Besides focus on the fundamentals, what practical stuff can you tell people about how to integrate this new world that they're in, right? Because everyone has to go through the transitional before the final phase or whatever that looks like. What should we be paying attention to today? Like beyond what we paid attention to yesterday. Jeff, you have some thoughts?
I do. There are a lot of folks out there talking about sort of the frontier of product management, for example. So what does a product manager look like in the AI age? And it's a collapsing of roles and product managers doing design and prototyping and product management work and maybe some engineering work, so becoming product builders. That's a lovely future. And I suspect that someday many people will be there. But today, and in the foreseeable next few years, particularly in the enterprise and in mid-sized companies, I just don't see that happening, right? It's just that the pace with which folks adopt change and new tools and new ways of working, it's never going to, it's just not going to keep up with the pace of technology, especially the pace of AI, as we've seen. And so what is going to make folks successful in the interim, right? As we take smaller steps, slower steps towards that future, particularly in these large organizations, beyond the fundamentals. But I don't want to trivialize the fundamentals, right? We don't have to necessarily repeat them here, right? But the idea, I've said it a million times, right? Good AI product managers are good product managers first. Right. And then, right, they can accelerate their work using these new tools. I think the benefits, if you're good with the fundamentals, the new tools amplify your capability to do great product management work, right? So if you understood that you should focus on a problem and an outcome and a customer, you can start to build cases and research and analyses and competitive work and prototypes and solution hypotheses much more quickly. You can get data from the market much more quickly. You can use these tools to shorten the learning loop so that in that same time period where you might have run one discovery cycle, now you can run 5. Right? I think that's incredible, right? But I want to be clear that acceleration and that benefit comes from knowing the fundamentals. The risk here is that there are a ton of crappy product managers out there, and product managers name only, right? So people who have kind of been given the job title but not the training, and the risk is kind of coming back to the way that we opened up this conversation, is that instead of accelerating the fundamentals with these folks, it will just accelerate the production of noise, right? And then what? And then we're just sort of drowning in this endless flow of information, and we have to figure out where to focus.
Awesome. I really like that framing. So what I do want to extract from both of you, I think you're sort of pointing out the potential downside of a wrong fork in the road. How do I am Joe Schmo, Acme Corporation. How do I practically avoid the AI deluge is upon me? Even if I did nothing, people are going to push ChatGPT Enterprise or something. Someone's going to buy it. What do I do next? How do I avoid the hellish landscape you just described? Ezinne, do you want to talk a little bit about that? Like, what is the playbook for me?
I will go back to what Jeff said, which is really go back to fundamentals of product management. And I do think that when we talked about feedback loops, when we talked about build, measure, learn, it was for a different world. It really was. And I do think that oftentimes we said we would do these discovery cycles, learn, build, and then, measure and come back. I think that there is enough information out there that we may need to 5x our research, 5x our, do more on the front end. We keep talking about judgment, insight, product sense. I think it's the world we're living in is one in which that begins to have even more weight. Not even just because it is good, but also because our customers are inundated with options. And we have to go from a place of this definition of done or complete to a definition of worthiness in an AI world. So it's a definition of worthy. In an AI world, trust is really important. So to know that when I will get something from this company, it has been refined, thought about, it has been given a beta stamp, it has been played with for a while, and now it is ready. So it's a very odd thing for me to say because before, and in many cases, product leaders ask us to help them go faster, right? And it's just worth asking ourselves, what does fast mean now? Is it about, just asking ourselves, fast for what? I've been hired, many of the jobs I've had over the last 7 years, or even with clients, I get brought in to make the product team move faster. That's the truth. And I think now it's a question I have in the back of my mind, which is fast for what? It's the idea of trust and worthiness and ensuring that judgment and taste is a culture within the organization is probably where I would be leaning on more now, given how quick we will be building. So I don't have a well-formed thought, but there's this paradox of fast because it always has been a thing. Oh, product is so slow. Product is so slow. Okay. I don't want them to be slow, but I do want them to be extremely intentional about the resourcing, which was usually what it was. Oh, we're burning dollars. But it's no longer even about that. It's about worthiness and trust and judgment and taste. And not at an individual level, even as a company, as an organization. So that's what I'm taking away from what Jeff said, really looking at that feedback loop and asking myself, hey, is it build, measure, learn, or is it measure, learn, then build, right? The building can stay inside. As an example, I'll give you this example. Anthropic, they ship every single day, but they put it into a beta system. They don't actually release it, right? They let you know for a long time that it's in this test bed area. So they're really conscious of the fact, which is how the mythos thing happened. Or they could pull it back because even though it was ready, it wasn't really ready, right? So we've got to figure out what that looks like as a product management discipline and framework across, and how do we begin to evangelize that?
So as a transitional thing, so I think I want to transition to practice. Jeff always talks about how people should be able to walk away with being able to do something. But it occurs to me, I've been trying to live at the front edge, open claw agents and so on for some time. And you sort of have to live a life before you have opinions about the life. And so what I'm noticing is that the fundamentals are, even with the hype, because, people are so hypey, the fundamentals are in plain sight, right? I remember going to OpenAI's Dev Day, and the thing I noticed was, holy shit, these people are good product people. There's product sense. It reminded me so much about my Microsoft days in certain ways when we were winning, right? And then, of course, Anthropic released their source code leaked. And what did we find? We found that the harness was really good product management. And the model is just like a ghost in the shell. It is 1.6% of TypeScript code that controls it, that just puts it inside an engine and like, giddy up. If that makes any sense. So this is revealing, I think. It is revealing that the fundamentals are what will give people advantage. It won't be agents just running around willy-nilly, right? So let me sharpen my point and I'll ask a practical question. We are still in this system because we have judgment, okay? And when the system isn't calibrated to deal with the humans who have better judgment, those humans get inundated and they can't actually exercise their judgment, right?
Mm.
And you can't get away. If we need us, unless an agent becomes a product manager, if you need us, we have to be leaders who coach the caution and discipline to let humans actually exercise that judgment properly. That's what I would say. And I'm seeing that every day. And, I have projects. I'll go to Ezinne, what do you think? I'll go to another human, what do you think? And so on and so forth. The agents can't tell me that. They don't tell me that, and they're useless at it, basically. So I'm gonna stop right there and ask you a practical question. So I'm in it. I've lived it for a few months. I am working on speed up. Like I wrote a skill that takes a product idea and then goes all the way from product to feasibility to research, all the way down to code and CI/CD, which is different because everything on GitHub is like code, skill. I'm like, well, let's do this at the product layer. Are there new tools I should be using if I'm a PM in this emerging thing that's going to confuse me? Are there tips and tricks? Go beneath, Jeff, go beneath the warning and the caution and the fundamentals. What should I be doing differently, right? How should I speed up the things that I can speed up without abandoning my judgment?
That's a great question. Really, it's a thoughtful question. Look, here's the thing, right? So there's a guy on LinkedIn named Pavel Hurin, and he took all the frameworks, right? Lean startup, solution, opportunity solution trees, lean UX, design thinking, you name it. And then he wrote Claude skills for each one of them, and he put it up on GitHub for free, right? So you can download that, you can add it to your Claude, you can write /discovery, and then start working, and it'll pick whatever it thinks is best for you to, or whatever tools it might give you some choices, et cetera, moving forward. Mm-hmm. That is a tool for people who know what's in that directory, right? Otherwise, you're just like, well, I'm going to fire off this weapon and see what happens. I'm going to fire off that weapon and see what happens, without a clear understanding of what's actually happening underneath it, right? And so that the knowledge to do that comes from experience, right? You said it. You have to have lived in order to have an opinion, right? And I think the risk here is that a lot of folks are going to try to take this shortcut and say, well, the tool will just do it for me, so whatever it decides is fine, and I'll just put that out there. To me, here, beneath the fundamentals, or assuming you've got the fundamentals in place, I think the key skill then is, if you're going to show up at a meeting where I'm a stakeholder, or you're a bunch of stakeholders, with your collaboration with your favorite AI tool, whatever the output is that you've created, you need to be able to tell me a compelling story about the thing that you're presenting, right? I think that's the key skill. If we're going to move beyond fundamentals, right, then the next step is, okay, you're going to use the tools to speed yourself up, to make yourself faster, right? When you show up in front of a client or a stakeholder, you need to be able to tie together the entire story in a compelling way, right? And so that when we ask you questions about the deliverable that you're putting in front of us, or the output that you've created, you're able to speak intelligently to the choices that you've made, right? Now, you may have brainstormed those choices with Claude or Copilot or ChatGPT or Gemini or whatever, right? You may have leaned on some pre-built skills, but you're the one who made those critical decisions along the way. You're the one who's presenting it, and you're the one who has to own it when this thing goes live into production. And so I want to hear a compelling story about why you made those choices, right? And that compelling story should instill confidence in me that you understand those fundamentals, right? That you understand that you're focusing on outcomes and the customer. To me, that's a winning skill set today, right? I will trust your output. Ezinne talked about trust. In the future, if I'm your stakeholder, right, I'm going to trust your output more than others because you've convinced me that this isn't some mindless prompt that you put in and you're handing me the output, but that you've actually critically thought about this all the way through as you've built it, and now you're trying to convince me that it's a good idea. So to me, it's storytelling is a huge part of this.
Ezinne, I'm gonna come to you in a second as we wrap. But Jeff, this is so clarifying, right? This is so clarifying. In the old world, the product guy or the engineer knew a little bit of a little bit, and the product guy was one who sort of wrapped it together. In this new world where we are all practically builders, code is commodity, we should actually be able to tell a richer story, like a 3-stack story. You can tell the story of the customers and why. You can tell the story of the design choices. You can tell the story, if you're smart and a good PM, of the engineering choices now, much better than you could, right? And then you can tell a fuller story to the market, to the customer. And so you're right, storytelling is actually a good litmus test because the stories should be richer. They should be multi-layered. They shouldn't be one department story and then go ask that guy, because frankly, we have better tools to unify those things, which is, where the whole concept of product builder. So if you can't tell the story, it's a canary in the coal mine that there's some part of the fundamental you missed. Anyway, that's what I got out of that. Isn't it? What is your take? What is the practical thing that a person can walk away with? Jeff dropped a big one, so
no. Let me add. Let me also bolster some of what Jeff said, because I think it's really important. I was in Atlanta with a bunch of CPOs recently, and somebody asked me about interviewing, and I think it layers well into what Jeff just said. And they asked me about critical thinking as a skill, etc. But underneath what Jeff said is this idea of what path wasn't taken. Right. And that's one of the things I always talk about when I say if you're interviewing for critical thinking skills, it is AI will spit something out to you. Can you tell me exactly why that is not the right answer? Can you argue against that choice? Right. So that was one of the things I was discussing as a way to test their understanding and the choices. So, Jeff, that idea of strong storytelling and being able to talk about the path that wasn't chosen and why, I think that is good insight into this being able to gate slop. Okay. My practical contribution, if anything, is that basically just taking a page out of the Anthropic and Brian Chesky at Airbnb and all that is product leaders owning a bit more about Japan, really checking their rituals in their organization for how they are up leveling the idea of taste making, like really looking at your rituals that are in place today and asking yourself, is there a belief that I don't want us to stop moving fast, right? We want people to learn to move fast, but where is that flag or that validity or check of judgment? Where is it happening within your organization? That's the thing I'd say I want to bring to bear and really have people ask themselves. So if you're a manager of teams, where is that? Where are you teaching judgment? Where are you teaching them to question whether they truly are shipping something that's worthy of the time, not even cost wise, but worthy of their customers' time? And a practical way that I've seen over time is creating a product council of sorts, a small, friendly group of people that are sandboxed in some way, and seeing if you can see signals of usage, signals of the things that you believe will happen. And many B2B companies, because of their nervousness of giving product managers access to customers, gate that ability. So building a safe group of people wherein which you can actually begin to see if you will see signals of some sort. You have to learn before you learn. Learn before you get into the marketplace, and make sure you have a method for doing that, because it is completely overwhelming. The amount of features, the amount of new products, the amount of noise, the amount of everythingness that is out there. So if you can do better, right, and be better, do that. that's what I'm leaving with you all.
So no, that's another powerful beat. Like, I feel like I'm receiving two double barrels from two great minds. So you're saying that most people ignore the rituals that make product managers and maybe other team members better at judgment. I completely agree. And I think you're also saying that we should create a nexus of taste and trust. And I think the reason that that's so important is that if you create that, it's a natural guard against slop getting through, especially if people trust it, right? If people trust it, basically, if you're a CEO or you are a salesperson or you are a junior engineer and you come up with something creative, God bless you. Thank God that you have the gumption and the creativity and the time to do it. But if you can't get through the taste core or whatever that is, it doesn't sound very egalitarian. So we have to work on that. But like, if you get through that, then you have some legitimacy. You can show this in front of customers. It represents a stamp of approval. So I really like that. I think that people can definitely build on that. Okay. I think, I think we're at the end of this conversation, and I just want to give you both a minute to conclude, and then we'll see our audience next time. So, Jeff?
Look, the bottom line is this. I'll say it again. I think if you want to be a great product manager in the AI age, you got to be a great product manager first. That's the first thing, right? We've talked about this, the fundamentals, right? And if you can build those skill sets, you'll gain that judgment layer. And then connecting that judgment layer to a compelling story, right? Why did you choose this work? To Ezinne's point, why did you not choose this other path or these other paths? That's the way that we are going to succeed, particularly in these larger organizations, right? I think startups are a different world, but I think in a larger in the enterprise space, this is the path to success in the AI world. That's what I believe.
All right, thanks, Jeff. Ezinne?
My take is this. Everything that Jeff said, and I think that when the phrase minimal viable product was coined, there was this idea of shipping taking a long time. So you needed to get it out quickly to begin to learn. So I just want us to challenge that phrasing. It was already being challenged. Like, was it worthy, etc.? But there is something else that needs to go out and help you learn. And there's another way to think about it. So I don't have the answer yet, but it's that idea of minimal viable product just needs to be refined for the AI world. And I think each company needs to go own what that means for them. In the company I'm working with right now, it's about worthiness. Is this worthy of our brand? Is this worthy of the trust that our customers have given us? Right. So that's the thing I'm leaving with y'all. That's my take.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for listening to us today. I felt really full listening to that, and I've been doing this for a very long time. So we'll talk to you all in the next podcast. All right. Take care. Bye-bye.